Hi everyone, thanks for subscribing to my channel. Today I'd like to speak about Trump's tariffs and the subsequent stock market collapse we've seen over the past number of days, and specifically about the European Union response. Today, the trade ministers in the European Union met in Luxembourg. Of course, Simon Harris had turned up to this meeting as well, and they've come back with a unified response. Now this is interesting. They're saying it's a unified response to Trump's tariffs and they won't yet retaliate. Well, over the next week we'll see whether retaliation measures take place, and of course this will have deep implications for people here in Ireland with higher prices. But of course, listen, it's always the way for the very elites in society, the very rich, the powerful, who call the shots ultimately, and ordinary people are the ones to pick up the tab. Yesterday I did a video on the Irish Business Employers Confederation that you can look back on in terms of the way they've been lobbying the Irish government, looking for a strong response from the government to support the global multinationals and to support big business, and to talk about putting people on short time immediately. Specifically, Ireland hasn't been hit as bad as once feared in terms of the tariffs across Europe, because in terms of our trade surplus with the United States, it's far greater than the European average. So if it was done on that basis, we'd be paying a lot more in terms of tariffs. But of course, we haven't seen the pharmaceutical or many more industries being put into this tariff regime yet, pushed by Trump. Now, Trump is doubling down on the tariffs with his talk today about China, looking at, currently they went on the 34% tariffs and China retaliated. Now, Trump said if they don't remove it, he will be putting a 50% tariff on China. Now, already we've seen the stock markets been really upset over this, and specifically it's really going to impact ordinary people most of all, because many of these big investors have deep pockets, and perhaps an overvalued stock market being brought back down to more reasonable levels they would see fit suits them to purchase more shares and make themselves richer, and offers more control to those at the top of society, while ordinary people pick up the tab. But specifically the European Union's response has been nothing short of really pathetic, to put it mildly. If you look at things specifically around what's happening geopolitically with the war in Ukraine, already we've had Marco Rubio coming across to Europe to say that European countries now should pay 5% of their GDP on defence, on the military-industrial complex. Now this is interesting because we've seen the US already look towards China in terms of the next port of call for a geopolitical challenge, and they're sharing off responsibilities, or hiving it off to the European Union, their defence military-industrial complex, to profit from. Now, of course, the European Union has been more than happy to go along with this. Up to €1 trillion will be spent on this Rearm Europe plan, which is absolutely just preposterous when you think about the cost of living disaster we have, and many more crises we have that ordinary people face day to day, that are putting money into weapons of war and a killing machine rather than serving the interests of ordinary people. But at the same time, they're in this trade war now with the United States. And what's fascinating about this is that they're looking now for negotiations with the United States. Now, a number of elements in Irish society have been looking for hard measures and to smash the United States with more tariffs, which is going to really create more havoc for ordinary people's lives. People like Lucinda Creighton, ex-Fine Gael, who now is managing director of her own consulting company called Vulcan Consultant, alongside her husband Paul Bradford, who's also ex-Fine Gael senator. And they have also pushed out this agenda to say they should retaliate hard, and they need a robust response. And he said that the US regime have nothing really in common with the European Union and many of those globalists in the European Union and that regime as well. This is interesting because they've been pushing and lobbyists for many of the war-mongering companies profiting from the war in Ukraine. Also, many more deals they do and lobbying for different corporations and companies that profit from the housing misery and across the spectrum. So what would you really expect from people like Lucinda Creighton and this company? And what's also very fascinating with this is that she's always also said that now is the time to move towards a digital single market. Where have we heard this before? Out of chaos or crisis comes the opportunity. The opportunity is now centralise more power, centralise more control, digital single market, remove barriers for any sort of movement of capital to profit as much as possible off people's expense, but keep the ordinary people down while funnel money upwards. And also about the Capital Markets Union, which is a way to funnel and access people's personal bank accounts. Here we go. We can see this happening time and time again. So out of crisis, wait and see what develops over the next period of time. And what's interesting really with the European Union response to this has been the talk about this so-called trade bazooka or big bazooka, and this will impact Ireland in terms of big tech companies, because we've seen much investment in Ireland, specifically through big tech companies here because of the low tax regime, and they're talking about this anti-coercion instrument, essentially, which was brought in 2023 and hasn't been used yet, which is about to protect the European Union from economic coercion by non-EU countries into making a choice by threatening measures. So here we go again. This could be the big bazooka used in the future. But of course Ireland are up in arms over this, and specifically Harris and Martin, because of reliance on the big tech corporations. And many of their head offices are located in Ireland. Of course, companies we see, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, Alphabet as well, and many of these corporations that lost a lot of money was wiped off their values. Up to 800 billion was wiped off in the first couple of days since Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. But of course, all these billionaires, all sat side by side with Trump on his inauguration day. These were the same billionaires who sat side by side with Biden. So you see how it works. They all work for the big guys in Wall Street, different sides of it, of course. In terms of their agenda, some have an approach towards the globalist agenda in terms of the push towards the Democrat wing of pushing their agenda forward towards a more woke style politics. And we see on the other side, we see the Trump push as well, where he has his own billionaire gang that serve the interests of the billionaires themselves fundamentally, and not ordinary people. So ordinary people are caught in a complete bind because of this, because there's no proper alternative to what's going on. Of course, in the European Union now they're talking about moving towards a proper tech industry and possible taxes on big tech. So let's see how this develops over the next period of time. Of course, this is all escalation. Perhaps it's a lot of smoke and mirrors behind it, but ordinary people fundamentally are the ones who will pay the price for this. So it's important to be fully aware to what's going on. Think critically to what's going on, and as well, what's more important than ever is not to get sucked in by the whole Project Fear, which has been rammed down people's throats relentlessly about what's going on in terms of this stock market collapse and so forth as well. Because it's worth remembering the most people who are invested in stocks and shares are the very wealthy in society. There are obviously pension funds as well impacted by this, and this is impacting a lot of people in the United States, specifically around this as well, whose pensions are wrapped up in the stock market as well, but not to the same extent as the very rich and the corporations, who will always benefit from any manufactured demise of the stock market and blame whatever they can to try and offset their responsibilities in propping up a completely corrupt and rotten system, like a giant Ponzi scheme fundamentally. But again, thanks so much for the support of my videos, really appreciate them. Please press subscribe to my channel. Please share my videos also as well. And so-called Black Monday, it's nice to see blue skies around us here in Dublin. So I hope it's nice wherever you're watching from. And please let me know where you're tuning in from as well. So it's important to take it all in essentially our stride and to take a rational look at what's really taking place in this whole Project Fear. So thanks for the support, and from Dublin, Slán. Take care. Bye bye.